The lecture hall of the Galactic Naval Academy fell silent as Professor Zethkar's four eyes swept across the assembled cadets. His chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the artificial lighting as he manipulated the holographic display with practiced ease. "Deathworlds," he announced, his translator rendering his clicks and hisses into standard galactic. "Planets so hostile that they forge their inhabitants into either apex predators or extinction. Today we discuss the most notorious deathworld in known space." Jack Morrison shifted uncomfortably in his seat, exchanging a glance with his study partner, Daisy Chen. Both humans sat near the back of the amphitheater, surrounded by a diverse array of alien species. Crystalline Veltari, gaseous nebulans contained in environmental suits, and the reptilian Saurid delegation. The hologram shifted to display a blue-green marble suspended in the void. Sol 3, locally known as Earth, Professor Zethkar continued. Surface gravity 1.3 times standard. Atmospheric oxygen concentration of 21%, highly corrosive and volatile. Extreme temperature variations ranging from -89 degrees to +57 degrees Celsius. A Veltari cadet, her crystalline form chiming softly as she moved, raised a translucent appendage. "Professor, surely no sentient species could evolve under such conditions?" "Ah, crystalline, an astute observation. The conditions are indeed so severe that we long believed complex life impossible. The planet experiences regular seismic activity, devastating storms, and catastrophic weather patterns. Its native fauna includes creatures that have evolved specifically to kill: venomous arachnids, massive predatory mammals, and microscopic parasites that can fell a being in days." Jack felt heat rise in his cheeks as several alien cadets turned to stare at him and Daisy with newfound horror and fascination. "The theoretical models," Professor Zethkar continued, "indicate that any species emerging from such a hellscape would possess supernatural reflexes, impossible strength, and an almost pathological inability to surrender. Thankfully, this remains theoretical, as no cadet from such a world has ever." "Professor," Daisy's voice cut through the lecture hall like a plasma blade. She stood slowly, her compact frame somehow commanding attention from every being present. "I have a question." The professor's compound eyes focused on her. "Yes, Cadet." Cadet Chen." She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "You said no cadet from such a world has ever survived the Academy's training regimen. Is that correct?" "That is the statistical reality, yes. The physical and psychological demands would be—" "Then how?" Daisy interrupted, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustic systems. "Am I standing here?" The silence that followed was absolute. Jack watched as realization dawned across the assembled faces, some lacking traditional features but somehow still expressing shock. Professor Zethkar's mandibles clicked rapidly. A sign Jack had learned indicated deep confusion in his species. Excuse me, Cadet Chen, but your species designation in our records indicates Homo sapiens," Jack said, rising to stand beside Daisy. "Sol 3 Earth, both of us." A collective intake of breath, or its equivalent across various respiratory systems, filled the hall. The Saurid delegation began hissing among themselves in their native tongue, while the Nebulan cadets' containment suits flickered with agitated light patterns. Professor Zethkar's voice carried a tremor when he spoke again. "This is unprecedented. Our xenobiological surveys indicated that Sol 3 was uninhabitable. The radiation levels alone should have prevented—" "Professor," Daisy said, her tone respectful but firm, "might I suggest that your surveys were incomplete?" She gestured toward the holographic Earth. "You mentioned the oxygen concentration as if it were toxic. For us, it's normal. You described our gravity as crushing, we call it home. Those catastrophic weather patterns? We have children who play outside during thunderstorms." Jack stepped forward, emboldened by his friend's courage. "Those venomous arachnids you mentioned? We keep some as pets. The massive predatory mammals. We domesticated the apex predators and they sleep at the foot of our beds." "Impossible," breathed Crystalline, her harmonics creating an almost musical quality to her disbelief. "The theoretical models," Professor Zethkar began. "We're wrong," Daisy finished. "Respectfully, Professor, your models assumed that such conditions would create monsters. But maybe, just maybe, they create something else entirely." She moved to the front of the hall, her steps confident despite being surrounded by beings who could literally dissolve matter with their bodily functions or crush steel with their appendages. Earth didn't make us cruel or savage. It made us adaptable. It made us resilient. It made us human. She turned to face the assembled cadets. We learned to cooperate because individual survival was insufficient. We developed empathy because cruelty would have destroyed us faster than any predator. Your planet has regular seismic activity, noted a saurid cadet, his reptilian voice carrying obvious skepticism. How do you survive ground that moves beneath your feet? Jack grinned. We dance. The confusion this generated was almost palpable. We learned to move with the earth, not against it, Daisy explained. When something is beyond our control, we adapt. When we can control it, we do. And when we can't tell the difference, she shrugged in a gesture that somehow transcended species barriers. We try anyway. Professor Zethkar slowly approached the holographic display, his multiple eyes studying the rotating planet with new perspective. Your species passed our entrance examinations, the physical trials, the psychological evaluations, the tactical simulations. With flying colors, Jack confirmed. Though we did find them rather gentle. Gentle? The professor's voice cracked slightly through the translator. Daisy nodded. Professor, with respect, your impossible physical challenges, they're about equivalent to our standard childhood education program. What you call psychological breaking points are what we call Tuesday afternoon. She gestured to encompass the lecture hall. We didn't come here despite being from Earth. We came here because we're from Earth. We've spent our entire evolutionary history turning the impossible into the inevitable. The hall remained silent as the implications sank in. These weren't monsters from a death world. These were humans, adaptable, resilient, and apparently unimpressed by what the rest of the galaxy considered unsurvivable conditions. Professor Zethkar's mandibles clicked in what Jack had learned was the equivalent of nervous laughter. Perhaps, he said finally, we need to revise our theoretical models. Daisy smiled, the expression somehow both humble and confident. Professor, I'd be happy to help with that. After all, she gestured toward the holographic Earth. We know the neighborhood pretty well. As the lecture continued, Jack noticed the subtle shift in how their fellow cadets regarded them. Not with fear or disgust, but with something approaching awe. They weren't monsters from a death world. They were proof that life finds a way, and sometimes that way leads to the stars.